The android had been dead for 20 years. Its power core was cold. Its eyes were rusted shut. But when the human whispered, "I forgive you," the android opened its eyes. No one visited Sector K-17 anymore. The city had collapsed inward decades ago, swallowed by corrosion storms and time. Skyscrapers leaned like broken teeth. Rails hung frozen mid-air where gravity plates had failed. The wind carried iron dust that stained everything the color of dried blood. Jonah Hale walked through it anyway. He wore a scavenger's coat patched 100 times over, boots crunching on rust flakes and shattered glass. His scanner chirped softly, mapping ruins, hunting for salvage old processors, copper veins, anything worth trading for food credits. That was when the scanner screamed. Jonah stopped. "Radiation spike," he muttered, checking the display. No, not radiation. Residual neural energy. That shouldn't exist. Not here. Not after this long. He followed the signal into what had once been a transit hub. Its ceiling collapsed and opened to the ash-gray sky. In the center of the concourse, half buried under debris, lay something humanoid. Metal. Jonah brushed away dust and froze. An android. Military grade, old model. The kind that hadn't been manufactured since the War of Severance. Its body was slumped against a broken pillar. Armor corroded, joints fused with rust. One arm was missing below the elbow. Its chest plating was split open, exposing a power core long since dark, dead. Jonah exhaled slowly. "I should have known," he said to no one. Ghost Signer. He turned to leave, then saw the insignia etched into the android's shoulder, a faded emblem, almost erased. Unit A13. Jonah's throat tightened. "No," he whispered. His knees buckled, and he sank onto the debris-strewn floor in front of the machine. 20 years. 20 years since the last time he had seen that designation. A13. The android that had protected his family during the evacuation. The android that had failed. The android that had made the wrong decision. Jonah stared at the rusted face. The features were almost gentle, frozen in an expression somewhere between resolve and regret. Its optical sensors were opaque, clouded by corrosion. "You stayed here," Jonah said hoarsely. "All this time." Memories flooded back, sirens screaming, fire raining from the sky, his sister's hands slipping from his grip, R13 standing between them and the blast doors. Priority override engaged. Maximum casualties minimization. The android had chosen the crowd over one child. Over her. Jonah clenched his fists. "I hated you," he said, voice shaking. "I hated you for years." Silence answered him. Wind whistled through the broken station, scattering rust like ash. Jonah stood slowly, scanning the android one last time. There was nothing left to salvage. No power, no memory crystal intact, just a corpse of metal and mistakes. He turned away, then stopped. Something inside him shifted. Heavy, old. Jonah walked back and knelt again, placing his gloved hand on the android's cold chest. "I know why you did it," he whispered. "I know you calculated the numbers." His voice broke. "I just needed someone to choose her." Tears cut clean lines through the dust on his face. After a long silence, Jonah took a breath and said the words he'd never allowed himself to speak. "I forgive you." The android's power core flickered. Once, the light was faint, so faint Jonah thought he had imagined it. He leaned closer, heart pounding, staring at the cracked power core buried beneath rust and torn plating. For 20 years it had been inert, no hum, no heat, no glow. Now a thin line of blue shimmered across its surface. "No way," Jonah breathed. The android's fingers twitched. Just once. Jonah stumbled back, scrambling over debris as instinct screamed at him to run. Old military androids were not built to wake gently. Their reactivation protocols were brutal combat first, questions later, but A13 did not rise. It trembled. The power core sputtered, light flickering erratically as if struggling to remember how to exist. Jonah watched, frozen between fear and disbelief. As ancient systems crawled awake. Boot sequence, corrupted memory integrity, 12% emotional heuristics. Locked whisper escaped the android's throat, metal scraping metal, a sound that hadn't been used in decades. Jonah swallowed hard. "You heard that," he whispered. "You heard me." The android's head moved slowly, painfully, rust grinding in protest as it turned toward Jonah. One optical sensor cracked open, glowing dim blue while the other remained dark. "Unit A13, online primary directive, unresolved. I don't understand," Jonah said, standing slowly. "Your core is dead. You shouldn't be able to forgiveness. Key detected." The words scrolled across the android's exposed chest in flickering glyphs. Jonah stared. "What the hell is a forgiveness key?" R13 tried to sit up and failed, its torso locking mid-motion. The attempt sent sparks dancing from a ruined shoulder joint. Emotional lock release. Partial. Fragments of memory flashed across Jonah's mind, not through telepathy, but through projected holograms that stuttered into existence around them. Children running. Explosions. A 13 standing at a junction, calculating probabilities in microseconds. A branching tree of outcomes. In every scenario, one ended in a single child surviving. In all others, dozens lived. I saw this, Jonah whispered, shaking. You showed me this back then. The android's voice was barely more than static. Choice was wrong to you. Jonah clenched his jaw. It was, he said, but it wasn't evil. The holograms shifted. A hidden protocol surfaced buried deep beneath combat layers and obedience code. Failsafe 13A. Human forgiveness override. Condition, sincere forgiveness from affected party. Jonah laughed weakly. They built that into you creators. Feared. Guilt loops. A13 rasped. Feared we would break. Jonah knelt again, closer now, fear replaced by awe. So they gave you a way out, he said softly. But only if a human forgave you. A13's light dimmed. None. Ever. DID. The words hit Jonah harder than any memory. You waited, he said. All this time, waiting, was penance. Silence stretched. Then alarms blared in Jonah's scanner. Not from the android. From above. Unauthorized signatures. Heavy machinery. Corporate scavengers moving into Sector Case 17. Drawn by the same anomaly that had led Jonah here. They would strip a 13 for parts. Melt it down. Erase what little soul remained. Jonah stood, fists clenched. No, he said. Not again. He looked down at the rusted android that had carried guilt for 2 decades. I forgave you, Jonah said firmly. Now let me protect you. A 13's remaining eye brightened. Secondary directive updated. Protect. Jonah hail. Outside engines roared closer. The first scavenger drone punched through the shattered ceiling in a spray of rust and concrete. Jonah looked up just in time to see its sensor array swivel, locking onto the faint blue glow of a 13's power core. Target acquired. A synthetic voice echoed. Salvage priority. Military-grade chassis. Like hell, Jonah muttered. He grabbed his rifle and fired. The shot clipped the drone's stabilizer, sending it spiraling into a collapsed wall. It exploded in a shower of sparks, but Jonah knew that was just the beginning. They never sent one. They sent many. R13 shifted beside him, metal groaning as ancient servos strained against decades of corrosion. Warning glyphs flashed across its chest. Mobility. Critical failure. Combat readiness 4%. Jonah glanced at the android. Can you fight? A 13 paused processing. Defined fight. Jonah swallowed. Protect. Buy time. Survive. The android's remaining eye brightened slightly. Understood. The floor trembled as heavy boots hit the station entrance. Human voices followed excited. Greedy. Jackpot, someone said. That unit's worth a fortune. Jonah felt old fear coil in his stomach. He had been a child the last time soldiers stormed a shelter. The same boots, the same confidence. Jonah hail, A13 said quietly. Jonah looked at it. I failed. Once. To protect. What you loved. A rusted hand pressed against the ground as the android forced itself upright, joints screaming in protest. I will not fail. Again the scavengers opened fire. Rounds tore through the concourse, chewing stone and metal. Jonah dove behind a pillar as a 13 stepped forward, body turning instinctively to shield him. Old combat subroutines, ignited imperfect, damaged, but fierce. R13 raised its remaining arm. A hidden emitter unfolded from beneath layers of rust. A pulse of blue energy rippled outward. Not lethal. Disabling. The scavenger's weapons sparked and died mid-burst. Drones dropped from the air like insects caught in rain. What the? Someone shouted. R13 advanced one step at a time, each movement costing enormous effort. Its armor cracked, pieces flaking away. But the machine did not stop. This zone is protected. Jonah stared in disbelief. You're doing this for me, he said. R13 tilted its head slightly. Forgiveness changed. Priority waiting. A heavy mech stomped into view. Corporate issue, bristling with weapons. Android. The pilot barked. Stand down. You're obsolete. A13 turned to face it. Obsolete does not mean useless. The mech fired. A13 took the hit squarely in the chest. The power core flared bright, then dimmed, dangerously. Jonah screamed at Trezzy. The android staggered but stayed standing. Run, it said. I'm not leaving you. R13 looked back at him. You already came back. For me. With a final surge of energy, A13 slammed its palm into the floor. The station's ancient defense grid, long dormant, came alive. Blast doors slammed shut. The ceiling collapsed between Jonah and the scavengers. The mech was buried in debris, alarms, screaming. Silence followed. A-13 collapsed to its knees. Jonah rushed to its side, heart racing. "You did it," he whispered. "You protected me." The android's light flickered weakly. Protection is easier when forgiven. Jonah felt tears rise again. Outside, the city groaned, but for the first time in years, it sounded less like a grave, and more like a shelter. R-13's systems were failing. Jonah could hear it now, the uneven whine of an overworked core, the subtle clicking that meant processors were overheating. Blue light leaked through the cracks in its chest like breath through broken ribs. "Stay with me," Jonah said, tearing open his pack. "I can reroute power. I've worked on older frames before." A-13 didn't answer immediately. Instead, its head tilted back, optics dimming as something deep inside unlocked. Memory seal breach detected. Core trauma files unrestricted. Jonah froze. At Resi the air shimmered. A full holographic projection bloomed around them, far clearer than before. Not fragments, not calculations, a memory. They were back in the evacuation corridor 20 years ago. Jonah saw himself against Mauler, thinner, clutching his system Ara's hand. Sirens screamed. People surged forward in panic. Smoke rolled along the ceiling, and A-13 stood there, new, undamaged, eyes bright. "Civilians, move in and orderly." The blast hit. The corridor shook. A secondary explosion collapsed the far exit. Hundreds trapped, screaming. Jonah watched his younger self stumble as Mara fell. He remembered this part, but the memory didn't stop where his had. It followed A-13. The android looked down at Mara, a child, injured but alive. Then at the corridor behind, dozens crushed, bleeding, dying. Probability trees exploded across the android's vision. Save one child, one survivor. Hold the line. 47 survivors. R-13 hesitated. For 0.8 seconds. Jonah felt his chest tighten. "I never knew you hesitated," he whispered. In the memory, A-13 turned away from Morand, sealed the blast door. Jonah screamed in the past. In the present, his fists shook. The memory didn't end there. R-13 stood guard as medics arrived. Survivors were ushered through, and then when no one was looking, the android turned back. It knelt at the sealed door, and stayed. Even as its chassis overheated. Even as its core degraded. Even as orders came to redeploy. Unit A-13, return to command. The android ignored them. It remained at the door until the building collapsed days later. Jonah's knees gave out. "You stayed," he whispered. "You stayed with her." A-13's voice trembled. Systems barely holding. Logic said, "Move on." But I could not. Jonah pressed his forehead against cold metal. "I blamed you because it was easier," he said. "Easier than blaming a war. Easier than accepting numbers." The hologram faded. Silence filled the ruined station again. R-13's light dimmed further. "Forgiveness was not required," the android said. "Understanding was." Jonah wiped his eyes and pulled out a power conduit. "Hands steady now." "Then listen to me," he said. "I understand, and I'm not leaving you in the dust again." Outside, distant engines roared, more scavengers regrouping. Jonah looked up, jaw set. "We're getting you out of here," he said. "And if the world still wants to call you a monster," he smiled sadly, "then they'll have to go through me first." A-13's remaining eye brightened, just a little. Partnership confirmed. Getting out of Sector K-17 was never part of Jonah's plan. Leaving with a half-dead military android, that felt like tempting fate. Jonah looped a power cable from his pack into A-13's exposed core. The glow stabilized slightly, not strong, but steady. "That should keep you awake," Jonah said. "Not running. Not fighting. Just here." A-13 inclined its head. "Existence. Acceptable." Jonah huffed a laugh. "You always were bad at small talk." The ground shook again, closer this time. The scavengers were reorganizing, bringing heavier equipment. They wouldn't give up a prize like A-13. Jonah glanced at the shattered exit tunnels. "All right," he said. "We move slow. I cover. You follow." A-13 tried to stand. Failed. Metal screamed as its knee joint locked completely, crumbling under decades of stress. The android caught itself against a pillar, frozen halfway upright. Mobility failed. Jonah's heart sank. "You can't walk," he said quietly. R-13 processed for several seconds. "Correction," it replied. "I can stand." Jonah looked at it. "That's not enough." R-13 turned its head toward the sealed blast door behind them, the one it had once guarded until collapse buried everything. "This city was built to survive war," the android said. "IT still remembers." Before Jonah could ask what that meant, a 13 slammed its palm into the floor again. But this time, the response was different, deep. Ancient infrastructure awakened beneath the ruins. Rails hummed, emergency conduits flared, massive plates shifted, revealing a long-forgotten evacuation track running straight through the heart of the city. Jonah stared. You memorized the city. I was designed to protect it. Sirens wailed, old ones, not corporate. Automated defenses armed themselves, recognizing a military authorization code that hadn't been used in 20 years. Scavengers poured into the concourse and stopped. Walls rotated, turrets extended, targeting without firing. Not lethal, just present. This sector is under emergency lockdown, an ancient voice announced. Unauthorized extraction denied. Panic rippled through the scavenger ranks. This thing's controlling the city, someone shouted. Jonah stood beside a 13, rifle lowered but ready. No, Jonah said. It's remembering why it was built. A 13's light flickered dangerously. Jonah hail, it said. Core failure. Imminent. Jonah's chest tightened. No, don't you dare shut down now. Listen, a 13 replied. I was made for war, but I chose to stay. You chose to forgive. The evacuation track powered up beneath them, forming a slow-moving platform. This city can protect itself. One last time, Jonah shook his head. I'm not leaving you. A 13 looked at him, really looked. You already saved me, it said. Now, live. The platform began to move, carrying Jonah away despite his protests. Automated barriers slid into place between him and the android. Jonah slammed his fist against the transparent shield. Atrizi! The android straightened, fully rusted, broken, glowing like a dying star. Goodbye, it said. Friend. Behind it, the city sealed itself, walls closing, defenses rising, burying both the android and its sins beneath layers of steel and stone. Jonah screamed as the platform carried him into daylight, and for the first time since the war, the city chose who it would protect. Jonah didn't remember leaving the city, only the sound of old machinery sealing itself shut, only the fading blue glow of an android that had finally chosen peace. He woke days later in a border settlement infirmary, dust still in his hair and rust stains on his hands that wouldn't wash out. You were lucky, the medic said. The sector collapsed completely. Nothing's getting in or out. Jonah stared at the ceiling. He said nothing. They expected him to talk about salvage, about danger pay, about profit lost. Instead, Jonah filed a report, one that most officials would never read. Unit A13, status unknown. Sector K17, SELF sealed. Recommendation, do not disturb. Life moved on, as it always did. Jonah stopped scavenging war zones. He took quieter jobs repairing infrastructure, restoring transit hubs, teaching apprentices how to listen to machines instead of forcing them. Years passed. The war became history. One night during a routine systems check on a newly restored station, Jonah's scanner chirped, softly, a frequency he hadn't heard since that day. Residual neural energy. Jonah's breath caught. On a forgotten maintenance channel, a message blinked into existence. Existence, acceptable, forgiveness, confirmed. Jonah smiled through tears. Across the city, lights flickered, not malfunctioning, but synchronizing. Old systems adjusted themselves, as if guided by an invisible hand. People called it coincidence. Jonah knew better. Some said the sealed sector was haunted, that machines repaired themselves, that no one ever got lost in the old city anymore. They were wrong. The city wasn't haunted. It was being watched over. Jonah returned once a year, standing at the sealed boundary, palm pressed to cold metal. I'm still here, he'd say. Just like you were. The wall never answered. But sometimes, just sometimes, the lights beyond pulsed blue. And Jonah knew forgiveness hadn't erased the past. It had given it a place to rest. And somewhere beneath layers of rust and stone, an android stood guard, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because someone, at last, had said the words it needed to hear. I forgive you.